So here I'm going to work on the 2023 question 1. So I'm going to make some videos going through the solutions of this work that you're giving a go to over the summer. So let's have a look at this one. So find the values of m for which the modulus of 5 plus 3m, so the absolute value of 5 plus 3m is equal to 11. So the absolute value just means the distance from 0. So the reason it's absolute value, in other words, the reason it has to be positive. So when you use those modulus bars, these two lines, it means absolute value, which means that has to be positive. And it has to be positive because it's distance. There's no such thing as negative distance. The smallest distance we can have is 0. So essentially, what we're going to do here to get around this is we're going to square both sides. So if you go back to your notes, you'll see that the method we always used was we square both sides. So if I have 5 plus 3m, the absolute value of that, I square it and I square the 11. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because whether the answer is positive or negative, it's kind of almost irrelevant because when you square something, you make it positive. So that's the method that we use. So we're going to square this out, 5 plus 3m, bracket 5 plus 3m. So we're essentially writing out the absolute value twice, and that's 121. So this is 25 plus 15m plus 15m plus 9m squared equals 121. So we're going to bring it all to one side, 9m squared. We have 30m. And then we have 25 take 1, 2, 1. So 25 take 1, 2, 1. So that leaves us with what? Minus 96 equals to 0. So just to make this a bit easier, we could probably divide across by 3. It might just get us to, see it a little bit clearer if there is any factorizing that can be done there. So that will go in how many times? 32 times. Okay. So we need to think what might work. So now you can do the minus b, or you can do factorizing and the null factor theorem. So I'll probably just do the factorizing. So for example, 3m and m. Now it's minus, so the middle signs are going to be different. So for example, plus and minus, I don't know, but I'm just going to try that. Now 32, so I'm thinking of a few combinations. We could do 32 times 1. We could do 16 times 2. We could do 4 times 8. Now just looking at the 3 and the 1, I think I'll try 16 and 2. So let's do our smiley face check and see 16m minus 6m does make 10. So I know that I'm right. So my answers are, so using the null factor theorem, now again, you will get the same if you do the minus b formula. So it's completely up to yourself. So this one's easy anyway. M is 2. So that's one answer. And over here, 3m is equal to minus 16. M is equal to minus 16 over 3. So both are done and the question is complete. Right, next one, part B. For the real numbers h, j, and k, express k in terms of h and j. Now, if you see express whatever, in this case k, it means we need to get k on its own. So you're solving for k, basically. So I notice there's a fraction on both sides, so I go and do my cross multiplication skill, which is always such a great one to get rid of fractions. Okay. So really it's j plus k is equal to kj. Now, the problem we have here is that k is on both sides. Oh no, sorry, hk. Sorry, I knew there was something I did there. So it was j plus k and sorry, kh is what I should have written there. Okay, kh. So the problem that I have is that I have k on both sides. So I need to bring them together in order to do something with it. So I guess I'll leave the j for the moment and I'll do hk minus k. So what I'm trying to do is bring the k's together, factorize out the k, And then finally, to get k on its own, I move the entire h minus 1. So it's j over h minus 1. So the h minus 1 was multiplying the k. So its new job is going to be dividing. So j all over h minus 1. And that's my answer. So that was a pretty easy one there from 2023. Now, there was one more part to this question, wasn't there? Yeah, part C. So we were told that x squared minus px plus 1 is a factor of x cubed minus 2x minus 3r, where p and r are elements of r and p is less than 0. Find the value of p and the value of r. Okay, so there's a few things, first of all, that I'm going to, I suppose, draw my attention to. So this is taking the form of a quadratic. So in other words, it has an x squared, an x, and a number. So that's your regular quadratic. This one is a cubic. Why? Because it has the highest power of 3. Now, what I notice first is that there is no x squared. So normally we have x cubed, x squared, x, and then a number. So if you can remember from class, to deal with that, we usually add in a 0x squared. And you'll see why in a moment that's important. So the number one thing I noticed was I was dividing a quadratic into a cubic, but I noticed that the cubic was missing an x squared term. So I compensate by adding in a 0x squared. Another thing I'm going to highlight, just so that I don't forget later, is that we're told p is less than 0. So in other words, p is negative. P has to be negative. Less than 0 is a fancy way of saying p is negative. Now, it's part of the set or, so it's negative, but it doesn't have to be a whole number. It could be, you know, a fraction, decimal, whatever. Right, now, I mentioned divide a moment ago, and you might have been thinking, why am I dividing? Well, we go back to the factor theorem, which tells us that if something is a factor, and we are specifically told that it is, there are the words, is a factor. If I know that it's a factor, I know that when I divide one into the other, I should get no remainder. So that's the theory I'm using in order to actually answer this question. So I'm going to divide x squared minus px plus 1 into my cubic, but I'm just going to include that x squared term that's missing, and I set it up like this. Now, I mentioned this when I was going through the video on the exam. You don't actually have to do long division. You can also multiply by x plus k and work it out that way. But I personally do like the long division, so I'm kind of going to do it that way. But of course, you can message me on Teams if you want to see it done in any other way. So if you want me to do the other method, or go back on your notes, try it and just make sure you get the same answer as me. So I'm going to do it using long division, and I expect my answer to be 0. That's the method here. So I start off, how do I make an x squared into an x cubed? Well, I need an x. Multiply back. X by x squared is x cubed. X by minus px is minus px squared. And then 1 by x is literally 1x. Now, what I normally do is I normally change the signs across. So I would change that to minus, plus, minus. Why? Because I want them to cancel. 0x squared plus px squared is px squared. Minus 2x minus 1x is minus 3x. And then normally I drop down the next term, minus 3r. And I would start the process again. So what's the process? Well, I go through my sentence and I say, how can I make an x squared into a px squared? Well, I would need p. Multiply back. P by x squared is px squared. P by minus px is minus p squared x. P by 1 is p. Now, again, I normally change my signs across. So I will change minus, plus, minus. They cancel. Now, I have minus 3x plus p squared x. And I have a minus 3r minus p. Now, I'll just rewrite that in a little bit more user-friendly way. So all I've done there is factorized out the x so that I can see that that's the x term, and then this is, I suppose, kind of the number term. Now, what did we say at the beginning? We said at the beginning that if this is a factor, then this is supposed to be 0, because otherwise it's not a factor. In other words, the remainder, the pink thing that I've highlighted, is supposed to be 0. So that tells us that the minus 3 plus p squared should be 0, and the minus 3r minus p should be 0. So in other words, each of the coefficients should be 0 in order for this to make any sense. So p squared is equal to 3. Now, p is the root of 3. Now, at higher level, remember, we always consider the fact that it's a plus minus. So, like in junior cycle, if you p squared is equal to 9, you probably just told me the answer was 3. But at higher level, we know technically it's plus or minus 3. And the reason negative 3, I also get 9. So I suppose we're a bit more sophisticated now. We're at Leaving Cert higher level, and hidden fact that there is a possible negative. Now, having said all of that, when I go to do the plot, I've highlighted in yellow, p has negative root 3. The reason it has to be, is it negative 3? Minus 3. Let's go back and check. That's x cubed minus px squared minus. So when I multiply back, I feel like I've got a sign wrong here. Minus px squared plus x. And then I change. Yeah, no, I think it's okay, actually. Sorry, I was thinking about my signs there. Okay, so p, now p, oh, sorry, I'm looking for the value of r. So I'm just going to move it over to the other side for a moment. So minus 3r equals p. So minus 3r is equal to, so I now know p is minus root 3. So r is minus root 3 over minus 3. So r itself is root 3 over 3. So I now have my value for r and my value for p. Okay.